That was a perfectly playful, joyful tune for a sermon around joy and play, so thank you. So as I read the news and go through social media, I'm constantly reminded of how much I'm in need of joy in these times. There's just so much that I see on a day-to-day, moment-to-moment basis that just makes me scream, where is the happiness? Where is the joy? What can I do to help sustain me in these times? And I think it's really important that we do play and have joy. I like in the reading that it talks about the Hindu notion of Leela, God's play. The idea that the aim of spirituality is to make all life play. That's a really interesting concept. And as someone who actually likes to play naturally, I resonated with that very much. Because play is one of the many ways that we can find joy, where we can release the stress that is in our bodies, the things that are troubling us, and allow us just for a moment to step away, find some grounding, remind ourselves that there is good in the world somewhere, and help us get to a point where we can then go back and face the things that are difficult. And as children, we're very good at play. And we are very good at taking the time. It's like, oh, I'm just going to go play. And you watch kids, and something will happen, and they're upset, and then they'll go play. And I think we need to reclaim that as adults. To remember that, when things are difficult and struggling, just to go play for a little bit, and just remind ourselves that, there is not all as difficult and as painful all the time. One of my friends and colleagues, Marisol Caballero, writes, "To play is to pretend. And honestly, sometimes the world seems too heavy to leave the house, let alone inspire moments of joy. But the more I watch the news these days, the more I'm come to view playing, intentionally seeking joy, as a means of radical resistance." And I really like that, because what she's saying there is that part of the system that brings up all these issues that we struggle against, the oppression, even the moments of sadness, the pain, all of that, part of the way it works is to keep perpetuating that feeling, keep moving that. So if we can actually step away from that and find moments of joy, we are actually resisting the oppression, the power, the strength that's bringing us down, that's hurting us. We are actually resisting that by saying, I'm going to find another way in spite of what's going on. It doesn't mean that doesn't exist, but we can actually claim for ourselves that I'm going to choose to find the spot of joy, and I'm not going to let you take that from me. So it's a powerful act of resistance, just to claim joy. And sometimes we need to claim that for ourselves, because that actually allows us then to go forward and do the work that we need to do to actually go out in the world and live our faith in the world. So what can we do to play? How can we start exploring this mode and reclaiming play? One of the ways we can do that is find things that we can create, make things. Whether it is taking some paper and some crayons and drawing something without worrying about how good it is, but just the act of putting crayon or pencil on paper and just making whatever you want. Or one of the things I like to create, I am a knitter. So, knitting is one of the ways that I create and find joy. So people knit, crochet, quilting. doing theater. I also do theater. And so that is a way of actually engaging. Um, you know, crafting, collages, you're doing wood crafting, all sorts of things, all things that you can create. Cooking is a way of creation. That can bring joy as well. All these things that we can allow that to bring joy for us. Creation is one way to play. Then there's games, whether you like to play card games or board games or computer games, play games, also role-playing games. There's so many ways that we can play games, but just, we can take different regular tasks we have to do and make a game out of it. That can just make something that feels like a drudgery and bring it a little joy. But if we can find ways to just play with it, see what that's like. And then there's also using our imagination. To actually take a moment to go for a walk and just let our mind wander where it will and see what happens. Maybe, imagine yourself imagine the world, what it would be like if it was the way you wished it would be. That can actually be a fun imagination and bring you joy. And also can help you think, what are the things how you might be able to make that come into reality. Or you could just have some real fun reading a book and then just go into that world and just see where that is. Just letting go. Play. One of the key things about play is that when you're really in the midst of play and in the midst of joy, time becomes really fluid. Have you ever had those moments when you're doing something and all of a sudden you completely lose track of time and you have no idea how long that you've actually spent an hour doing something and it felt like it's just been like 2 minutes? Has that even happened for anyone else? Yeah. That's play and that's joy. And that's also a key piece of some spiritual practices where that you're actually it's called stepping out of time, where you're so engaged in the action and you're so present to what you're doing that time just flows by on its own and you don't even aware of what's happening because you're fully present. And so sometimes what play does is allow us to be completely present to what we're doing, what we're engaged in now. It's a mindfulness meditation. And that sense of mindfulness can really center us and ground us and help us. It's almost like a reset in our bodies and in our brains to be able to move to the next thing. So I'm going to invite you for a moment to engage in a little moment of play. And we're going to do what is called a hand dance. And I'm going to invite you to take one hand and kind of lift it up. And then move the hand just slowly. And kind of see which ways you can move. And just let it flow. Whatever comes to you of moving your hand. Kind of move slowly. And then maybe try making some fast movements. And, and make jerky movements like this. There's all different things we can do. We can make shapes with our hands as well. And I invite you to just take a moment just to play and let your hands move and make shapes, go fast or slow. And if you feel like bringing another hand in, you can do that as well. Don't want to go too far out of your comfort zone, so one can be fine. Some people might even want to bring more of their body into it as well, and if you want to do that, but let's just take a moment and just move as we are able. Lovely. You're going to bring your hands down. It was just beautiful to watch the smiles spreading across as you took a time to play. And smiling is really important. The studies show that smiling triggers the release of chemicals in your brain that causes relaxation, pain relief, and as an antidepressant. Smiling is healthy for you. And there's many things that in our lives that prevent us from smiling. And if we can just take a moment to smile, that can actually be very beneficial. Smiling is addictive. If you are in a space, and there's actually some great studies of this, of people being shown pictures of people smiling, and it does not take long for that person to start smiling themselves. That when you see someone smile, you want to smile as well. And so smile is something that you can give as a gift to someone else who may need a little bit of joy in that moment. That smile can be helpful. And then smile can keep growing, and it can move sometimes into laughter. And we start to laugh. And I think of laughter sometimes as a way of kind of like yoga for your insides. Because it gets the insides of your body moving, and you're breathing, and your body's expanding, and your lungs are expanding, and it's actually really helpful. And there is actually laughter yoga practices, and if you're actually interested in that, you can actually go to a class in laughter yoga, which is about that expanding and your breath and letting all of this, because if you think of all the organs that are right here in your torso, and that laughter moves all of those and gets them flowing and moving, that really laughter can really invigorate you. So I think that we can think of play and joy as a spiritual practice. And I'm one who believes that everyone should have some sort of spiritual practice in some way, shape, or form. And we just need to find the one that works for us. And I think play can be one of those things that you try. The thing that allows you to remember that joy still exists. That in the midst of all the things that we see and all the pain and heartbreak that is out in the world, to remember that out there is still joy. And to be able to hold on that as a lifeline through all the difficult times. Anais Nin writes, "Joy appears now in the little things. The big themes remain tragic, but a leaf fluttered in through the window this morning, as if supported by the rays of the sun. A bird settled on the fire escape. Joy in the taste of coffee. Joy accompanied me as I walked through the press. The secret of joy is the mastery of pain." May we find times of joy even when it is difficult. Can we find ways to celebrate life, celebrate our communities that support us, to find ways to create, to play, to imagine, because those all can be tools for to create the world that we believe in, the world that our faith calls us to be. A place of connection, of love, of equality and freedom. All these things that we talk about in our principles, that we struggle to live into ourselves, because I think our principles are a pretty high bar, and we are constantly struggling to live into those. And joy, I think, is one of those ways that reminds us that we can live into those in some way. Last night, I celebrated with groups of friends and neighbors One of our neighbors has passed away a few weeks ago, and Friday would have been his 90th birthday. And yesterday we decided to start a tradition of going to and Burger Park in Chicago. There's the Waterfront Cafe, and we decided every year around July 4th we are going to gather together because it's one of his favorite places and give a toast to him and celebrate his life. Even though he wasn't always, the best of friends, and I wasn't always, the ideal person we wanted to deal with, yet he also was a good friend to all of us. And we decided to find the joy in the midst of that sadness. And so in those times where we find struggle, we can also find times of joy, of celebration. And we can, in those times where we are struggling, times we see that the world is not fair and is not working the way it should, we can find places of joy. And we can create places for joy for others who may not be in that spot yet where they can see it from themselves. We can create the container for joy that they can enter into. But if we can find joy, that can sustain us, that can hold us, and help us even just get through to the next day. May we find joy, may we play, and may we have hope for a better future where the feelings of love and compassion, freedom and equality, respect for all is centered in our world. Amen. Blessed be.